folks, welcome to Board Game Brawl, and I'm going to make a wager that if you're watching this video, you know exactly what Magic the Gathering is. It is a collectible card game that was pretty much the first collectible card game, and it is so popular and has become so ubiquitous that at this point it's a household name. Even if you talk to a civilian, and so to speak, and mention the name Magic the Gathering, they're going to know what you're talking about, sort of. So with that being said, there have been tons and tons of games that have tried to duplicate what Magic does and do it better. Lots of games that are basically just other collectible card games. Really haven't changed much other than the theme. But then there are some card games that try to take the base idea of Magic, two dueling sorcerers going at it and summoning monsters, and make it better, make it different. And that is exactly what Colby Douch from Plaid Hat Games tried to do when he created Summoner Wars, which was the very first game, I believe, that Plaid Hat Games put out, and definitely their most popular one by far. It pretty much started their company, and they've made a lot of very interesting games since then, but they're still putting out Summoner War stuff. There's still a lot of expansions. It has a huge tournament scene, and the reason for that is because it is, even though it's certainly nowhere near as popular as Magic, I mean, I don't see this getting played at my friendly local gaming store, nevertheless, it takes the base idea of Magic, of basically two summoners going at it, but adds some very, very unique ideas. Basically, this is a miniatures game, and you wouldn't know it if you just was looking at the components because it's just a bunch of decks of cards, but there's a board in here, and what you're doing is you're taking your summoner, the card representing your summoner, which is actually a card, whereas in Magic, you basically are the summoner, the planeswalker. But in this game, you have a card representing all of your units, including your summoner and all of the troops, and you're going to move them around the board as if they were miniatures and battle your opponent, trying to take out your opponent's summoner. That's the core of the game, but there's a few other unique things that make this very interesting. But did I like it? Well, I'm going to show you everything there is to know about the game that's important anyways. Then we're going to come back, and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, let me give you a brief overview of Summoner Wars, the Master Set. Now, in the Master Set, you have 6 different factions, and there are other expansions you can buy that are going to add more factions and even more cards to add to existing factions. But in the Master Set, you just have 6 to choose from, and we're going to focus on 2 in particular, the Mountain Vargath and the Benders. The goal of Summoner Wars is that each player is going to have a summoner, and you're trying to take out your opponent's summoner before he takes yours out. As soon as you deal enough fatal damage to your opponent's summoner, you win the game, no matter what else is going on the field. Now, all the battles are going to take place on this board. There are spaces for the cards, and you're going to move the cards around just as if they were miniatures. Now, you also have a bunch of dice here. Dice are going to be used to resolve combats. The basic rule of thumb is that if you roll a 1 or a 2, you fail in your attack roll. If you roll a 3 or higher, you succeed on your attack roll. However, there are going to be bonuses and penalties, and you're going to be able to roll more than 1 die, so that rule is going to change constantly. You have wound markers, and when a wound marker is just on this side, it's just going to count as 1 wound. You can flip it over to the other side to have it count as 3, but it's important to keep track of exactly how many wounds cards have. And you also have a starting setup. You see how there are already cards out here? These are the different starting setups for the Mountain Vargath on this side of the board, and there's a line that you can barely see here in the center, differentiating the 2 sides. And then you have the Benders on the other side. And each player is going to have a card which says exactly which units you're going to take from the deck and where you're going to place them, including your summoner. And there are spots on either side of the board. It's the same on both sides, where you're going to have your draw pile of cards for the faction that you have. You're going to have a magic pile and a discard pile, and I'll get to all of that in a minute. But the most important thing are the actual factions that you're going to put against each other. So let's go ahead and take a look at those cards. Alright, so the cool thing is that all of the different factions have different backs on their cards, which is not only an easy way to differentiate them, but it actually becomes relevant when it comes to the magic pile, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, like I said before, both factions have a card which on one side is going to tell you a cheat sheet of how many different types of event cards you have in your particular deck. This is the name of the summoner, so for the Mountain Vargath, it's Sunderved. And then over here you have the turn phase summary, which is the same for both players. And on the other side is the little chart of how your beginning setup is. As you can see, the benders have the exact same type of card with a different setup, obviously. And then, as far as the actual cards in the deck, now at the beginning of every phase is a draw phase. The draw phase is you're going to draw up to 5 cards. It's possible to have cards left over from a previous turn, in which case you're going to just draw back up to 5 from your draw pile, which is right here. And like I said, it's the same on both sides of the board. So here's the kind of cards. So first is a wall, and both players start with a wall out. Walls are important not just for blocking your opponent's movement, and possibly your own, but also this is the only place where you're going to be able to summon your creatures. You're always going to summon adjacent to a wall. Adjacency in this game is always going to be orthogonal, which is north, south, east, and west. You can neither summon nor move diagonally in this game, or attack diagonally, unless your card specifically breaks the rules and has some sort of special ability. It's also important to note that walls can be destroyed just like units. All these little circles represent health points. If your opponent attacks your wall and fills up all these circles, boom, the wall is destroyed, which could be very bad unless you have your other wall out. Now, here's an example of one of the units. This is one of the common units, and it'll say right underneath the name, it says warrior, and then it says common underneath. The big number is the unit's attack value. Whenever this unit attacks, and we'll get to how that works in a moment, you're going to roll that many dice. The number underneath that is the summoning cost of this unit. So if it says 1, that means you have to use 1 card from your magic pool. I'll explain about that in a moment. The little sword represents that this is a melee fighter. That means that you have to be adjacent to an opponent. And like I said, adjacent means being orthogonally adjacent in order to attack. And these little dots here that are filled in are this unit's health points. So he can take 2 damage before he dies. And then every card's got, or most cards, have a special ability, which is going to kick off whenever it applies. So the warrior for the Mountain Vargath has the Battle Frenzy. And what that says is that when attacking a common unit with this warrior, if this warrior is on your opponent's side of the battlefield, add 1 to this warrior's attack value during that attack. So, like I said, there's a line in the center of the field here. So if he's attacking on this side, an opponent's unit, boom, he gets another +1 to his attack value, which means he gets to roll an extra die, which can be kind of cool. Just real quick, we have the Brute. The Brute has 3 health points and costs 2 to summon. Still only has 1 attack value, but he has a special ability as well. It's different. The Rusher is 1 and 1 and 2 health points, but he gets to move faster on the battlefield. Now, those are the common units. Now, let's get to the champions. Now, the champions are much more powerful units. That there's only one of each kind of unit in each deck because they're very unique. And as you can see, they usually have better attack value and much more to summon. Like this guy, Quen, is 5 more to summon. But they usually have better abilities. Like he's ranged and he has 4 health points, which is a lot. And because he's a champion, he does not suffer the same penalties as common units, which are usually really bad. And his special ability is Chain Lightning, which is once per turn. After attacking with Quen, you may spend a magic point to attack with Quen an additional time, which is really, really significant. So that can be huge. Torridon takes 6 to summon, but he has a lot of life points, and he has this cool trample ability that lets him move over enemy units and deal auto damage to them, which is very, very awesome. Grouter is really, really good at destroying enemy walls. In fact, he deals auto damage to walls if he ends adjacent to him, and he has 3 attack value, which is just insane. And then we get to event cards. Event cards always have a picture of your summoner on one side, and there's a special phase. It's actually going to be the 3rd phase of the game where you can play as many event cards as you want from your hand, and they all do different things. So Torridon's Advance actually gives extra movement to the champion Torridon specifically if you use it. Superior Planning lets you basically search or draw or discard for a specific event card, which can be very good, and they all basically do things like that. The Bender deck is essentially the same, just like all the decks as far as like the type of cards. So you have your wall, but each deck has a different type of focus. So if you didn't notice, the Mountain Vargath are all about attack mostly. But the Benders are all about control. So the Deceiver, which is one of the common units, has very bad health, and attack and costs are all basically normal. But she has a really cool stun ability, which is basically that when a common enemy unit begins adjacent to her, that unit cannot move or attack, which is really, really annoying if you're on the receiving end of that. And she's only a common unit, so she's easy to get out. The Breaker has higher costs, the same crappy health and attack points, but after attacking an enemy unit, you can reveal the top card of the opponent's draw, and you can discard that card unless that opponent plays magic points. So that can be irritating as well. It's basically like milling through, if you're familiar with that term, an opponent's deck. The controller can, after a successful attack, can move a unit against its will, either their own friendly units or an opponent's units. And then we have some of the champions, which are always kind of crazy. Telepathic command. At the end of your attack phase, you can choose a common unit that is within 3 spaces, and you can immediately attack with the chosen unit, even if it's already attacked, so that can be nasty. And you have more champions with more health, and you see that they don't really have the attack, except for her, but they usually have less attack and less health than the Mountain Vargath because these guys are more control-oriented, but that can be very significant. And here's the event cards, which are all magic related. So choose an opponent if you have 5 units on fewer units on the battlefield than that opponent. Move up to 2 cards from the top of that opponent's magic pile. So again, more trickery type stuff, not necessarily getting more power to any of your units. And I almost forgot to actually go over the actual summoners. So what's different about the summoners, they have the same kind of health points and attack values that your other units do. And again, you win the game if you can knock out your opponent's health points completely. But here you notice that they have no summoning cost because they start in the game and you can never actually summon them. But they have their own type of special abilities as well. Like he's going to be able to give buffs to his troops. And the Bender Summoner, you see the same type of stuff on the card, has a really nasty one which can basically, if you're willing to spend the magic points, you can just destroy one of your opponent's cards, whether it's common or a champion. So that can be very nasty. Now, how does the actual gameplay go from turn to turn? All right, let me just take you through a turn as the Mountain Vargath, just to give you a taste of what the gameplay is like from turn to turn. So you're going to start off with a hand of 5 cards at the beginning of your turn. You'll always draw back up to 5. If you have cards left over from before, it's too late to do anything about them. They're stuck in your hand, and you just make sure that you have 5 cards in hand from your draw pile. So let's take a look at what we got here. I have 3 common units. I know you can't really see that, but it's the Brute, the Warrior, and the Rusher. And then I have 2 event cards, Muster and Superior Planning. We'll get to all that in a moment. So now it's my summoning phase. So you can only summon adjacent to a wall, and adjacency is only the 4 orthogonal sides next to the wall. And the way you're going to summon is by using cards from your magic discard pile. And I haven't gotten to how you build that yet. I will in a moment, but let's just say for now I want to bring out a Rusher and a Warrior. So I'm going to look at the card. I'm going to see that those each cost me 1. So I'm going to have to take 2 cards from my magic pile and put them into my discard pile. You can just put them face up to show that they're different. And then I'm going to put these 2 wherever I want. I'm going to go ahead and put the Rusher there and the Warrior right there. And that's it for my summoning for now. I'll go ahead and leave those. I could have summoned more, but I'll just save those magic points for later. Now I have the option to play event cards, and why not? I'll go ahead and play the Superior Planning card, which I'll immediately put into my discard pile. Then I can go fishing for another event card, and just for the purposes of this, I'll just grab a Greater Command. Why not? And I won't even bother to use it. So that's the end of the play event cards phase. Now it's movement. I can move up to 3 of my units 2 spaces each. I don't have to use all that movement. I don't have to move all 3 units, but I can choose 3 if I want. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Rusher. The Rusher, if I begin it on my side of the battlefield, I can move up to 2 additional spaces. Well, that's really great. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is move him up 3 spaces. Remember, you can only move adjacent, you can't go diagonally, so I'll move 1, 2, 3, put them right next to my opponent's Deceiver there, and I'll go ahead and move my other Rusher, 1, 2, 3, put them next to my opponent's Controller, and let's see, I have 2 more spaces. I'll just go ahead and move this Warrior 2 for now, because why not, without really playing anything. Once the movement is done, now I can attack. Again, I can attack with up to 3 units, and I have to follow the rules of either melee or ranged, and adjacency. So I have 2 units that are adjacent to 2 enemy units. They're in melee, so that's fine. My Warrior is not adjacent because he's diagonal to that Deceiver, so he can't do anything. Because I've only got 2 units, I can only make 2 attacks. So I choose how I want to resolve these. I'll do the Rusher first on this Deceiver. My Rusher's attack value is 1, so I'll roll 1 die. And I rolled a 1. So that Deceiver is fine. Takes no damage because a 1 or a 2 is a failure. So this is going to be really embarrassing if I roll another 1 or 2, but the other rusher is going to attack that controller and really hope for not a 1 or 2. Yay, I got a 4. This wasn't a total embarrassment. So I deal 1 point of damage, which normally, for like my units, for example, I'd go ahead and put a wound counter there. But controllers only have 1 crappy health point. So I defeat that. What happens to this card? It does not go in my opponent's discard like you might think. It goes in my magic pile. I defeated you, I take your soul, or whatever, put you in my magic pile, boom, done. So, that's all my attacks. Now we go to the last phase, which is build magic. What does that mean? Well, I have 3 cards left in hand. I may discard any number of these 3, not to my normal discard pile, but into my magic pile. What that's going to let me do is on my next turn, when we get back to my summoning phase, I now have more cards to spend, quote unquote, as magic points to summon more and better cards. That's part of the decision making of this game. Do you get rid of cards that might be helpful to you, but might let you summon more and better cards when you draw back up to 5 next turn? But that's basically what's going to happen. Both players are going to keep taking their turns like that. If you run out of cards in your deck, play continues. You do not reshuffle anything. You have to finish the game with whatever cards you have left in your hands and in your magic pile. And the game does not end until someone's summoner is defeated. Now, what I didn't mention at the beginning of this video was that I have a long and sordid history with Magic the Gathering. Basically, I played it for a very long time when I was in my early high school years. Then I quit. Then I came back because of a girl when I was an adult. And then we broke up, so then I got out of it again. And the reason why Magic could never stay in my life as a permanent fixture was because of the collectible aspect. I hated trying to compete with people as far as getting the hottest, newest cards and spending hundreds of dollars on booster packs for random draws, or just spending hundreds of dollars on individual pieces of cardboard, which was ridiculous to me. Even as I was doing it, I realized that it was ridiculous. And also, when it comes down to it, and this is not a review of Magic the Gathering, I'm just leading into my Summoner Wars review. When it comes down to it, Magic the Gathering never had a great theme. It had fantastic artwork. To this day, some of the best artwork I've ever seen. I don't know how they get it, how they talk these people into making so much fantastic artwork for them. And the idea of it is cool, the planeswalkers and all that, and they've added actual planeswalkers to the game in recent years, which was interesting to me. Some people don't like it. But even so, when it comes down to it, it never felt like a very thematic game to me. And I'm sure that every single pro tournament player that you ask would feel the exact same way because, it's all very methodical. It's all just numbers to them. I don't have that feeling from Summoner Wars. Quite the opposite. I feel that Summoner Wars is a fantastically thematic game, and it's a great game. I'll just cut right to the chase. I love tactical miniatures game. Okay, I don't play nearly as much of them as I would like to. I really want to start getting into it more and more. And even though this is played all with cards and just a board, this is essentially a tactical miniatures game. But I like it, and it's much faster and easier to set up than an actual miniatures game. And I love the idea of moving your units around and having different types of units and going after the summoner and having these different tactics that you can use and the event cards that can modify the combat. Now, a lot of people do not like, people, especially my game group, I should say, don't like the die roll for combat. And I can understand that. However, I think this is a kind of a theme in some of Plaid Hat's other games. It's the one little bit of pure random chance. I mean, there's random card draw as well, but really not even that much. But that die is just represents that little bit of strategy, and it can be mitigated by, many of the factions have abilities to give you more dice and to give you bonuses and such. So it can make it better. And because this is supposed to simulate battle to some degree or another. Actually, obviously it's a fantastical, mythical battle, but nevertheless, there's always random chance in battle. There's always a chance that something's going to go wrong, so I don't mind the die roll. I love, especially, the way that you use magic, how you have to kill your opponent's troops to fill your deck, to fill your magic pool, to summon more monsters, or choose to discard cards from your hand, which is a very interesting decision. I love when you have critical decisions that you have to make turn by turn in games. And it's like, I kind of like this card. But if I dump this card now, I have a better shot at summoning this other awesome card that I still have in my hand. But do I want to rest all of my hopes on this champion card coming out that costs all my mana, all of my magic, with the hopes that it's going to turn the tide in my favor. What if it doesn't? What if I just bring this guy out and my opponent just does some nasty trick and everything was for naught? But you don't know, and that's Battle. And that's what I like about this game. That's why I think it's thematic. I think that turn by turn, it's just all this critical decision making, which I really, really enjoy. I like the concept of the walls. It's kind of weird that your guys can only be summoned by walls. They're magical walls, but whatever. You had to have something for there. I had not actually played with every faction deck from the box set, but I played with like 4 of them. I love how they're all very, very different. I love the Benders and how they're all about control. I love the, I'm blanking on the name, but the basically like the horned guys who are all about just charge and attack. Really great. And, there's tons of other expansions for it. And let me say this is another positive of the game, is that it doesn't have that same collectible aspect of Magic the Gathering. There's a lot of decks, and yes, I mean, you're going to pump a lot of money into this game if you really get into it, but not all that much. You know what you're getting. If you buy an expansion deck for the Vanguards, you know that you're getting the same Vanguard deck that everyone else gets. But it comes down to skill, not who has the money to get the rarest card. And I love that about this game. I love this about other games like the living card games that Fantasy Flight does, where you know what you're getting and everyone's on equal footing as long as they're willing to buy those expansion packs. But quite frankly, I think even the decks in the Master Set can be very good going up against anyone else with other expansion cards or the reinforcement packs that they have, because they're all balanced very well. I know that some people complain about this game because it's a miniatures game, so why not just have miniatures? I've definitely heard some people, like the guys from the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, complain this is just like a faux miniatures game. Why not actually have miniatures? Well, I like the portability of this. As long as you've got the board or anything representing the board and those stacks of cards, you're good to go. I hate having to store miniatures. I love miniatures, but I hate having to store them. They can be a little clunky. Even if you had miniatures, you'd still have to have cards off to the side to know what your units did. So I like moving the cards around. You probably have to sleeve them eventually because moving them around makes them scuff much easier. But nevertheless, those are all small quibbles. I think Summoner Wars is a fantastic game. I'm only scratching the surface of it, and I can't wait to play it more. I wish I could play 2-player games more in my group, just for this game especially. But I can't wait to see some of those other faction packs. I'm resisting the urges of my acquisition disorder to buy them all right away. But I can't wait to see what else Summoner Wars has in store for me. So that's Summoner Wars from Plaid Hat Games, designed by Colby Douch, something like that, Colby. And this is Nick for Board Game Brawl, reminding you to get out there and game every day and every way. Take care.